And to close out this opening ceremony, I would like the Minister for Agriculture, Ranching and Supply, who will participate remotely, Ms. Teresa Christina. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to participate. I'd like to greet especially Madureira, President of the Spanish Chamber, Ignacio, Ambassador Ignacio Ibanez, Ambassador of the European Union in Brazil, Gili Spinari, Minister for Cooperation, Development and Commerce, Foreign Commerce and Trade from Finland, my dear friend Enrico Brigatigia, Secretary of the State for Internationalization in Portugal, and Marcelo Botelho, President of the Amazon Foundation for Support and Research from PESPA, today representing the Governor Helder Barbalho. It's an enormous pleasure to be here to participate in this important event that seeks to promote the approximation between Brazil and Europe in favor of sustainable development of the Amazon. I would like to congratulate the Spanish Chamber of Commerce and the Brazil-Finland Chamber of Commerce for the organization of this meeting in partnership with Euro Chamber's cooperative. I would like also to congratulate the Ambassador of the European Union, Ignacio Ibanez, for answering an important call from the President of the Republic and the President of the National Council for the Legal Amazon, General Bilton Morão, to encourage European companies to strengthen their investments in the country. The paradigm of sustainable development, which is so necessary to enable transformation in the Amazon, represents a major opportunity for investments and innovation, technology and new productive arrangements in favor of the inhabitants of this region, which present some indicators, present some of the rates, some of the lowest rates of development in Brazil. The beginning of the government of President Jair Bolsonaro, the Ministry of Agriculture, Ranching and Supply incorporated into its portfolio the areas of family agriculture, fishing and aquaculture, besides the Brazilian Forest Service and the National Institute for Colonization and Land Reform, which had been scattered around under the command of other ministries. And this process brought together new competences for the ministry, new duties, providing an aggregated vision of the agriculture and ranching in Brazil, enabling public policies to be planned that will synergistically unite the three pillars of sustainable development. In this context, we organized the ministry's action around three strategic pillars: territorial organization with focus on land title organization and environmental organization, innovation and sustainable production, and productive inclusion of family agriculture. There's no region in Brazil where these three elements are articulated and most integrated than in the Amazon, where the challenges for constructing sustainable development are significant and multidimensional. The first pillar, land title regularization, is an essential element to bring economic growth and social inclusion and environmental conservation to the Amazon. It's important to have present that the region today has fragmented territorial organization because of public policies by the state carried out over decades that have induced the colonization occupation by more than 20 million people in seeking in land and economic and social development. Only with the result directly of land reform projects, more than 750,000 families were settled up until 2016 in the Amazon, without, however, any perspective for getting definitive land title for their lands, and therefore for having citizenship guaranteed. Land title regularization means that answering a stark debt of the Brazilian state. Land titling is to give visibility to millions of Brazilians who do not have access to public policies in the state and therefore are frequently restricted to the use of rudimentary productive techniques and even predatory production techniques. Besides that, without land title regularized, this is fertile land for the practice of all sorts of, and especially deforestation, illegal deforestation. This reality does not favor either economic advance of the inhabitants of the region or preservation of the forest and the use of its environmental assets. Land titling, for its part, strengthens the responsibility of the producer for implementing the Brazilian Forest Code, reconciling sustainable production with protection of the environment. It's important to get back and remember that in the illegal Amazon, only 20% of the area and rural properties can be used for production. And the rest of the land must be under native vegetation. With this situation, the Ministry of Agriculture has advanced in two levels: to work with the legislation, intensifying using of remote sensing and the crossing of data to have more speed to the land title processes in parcels up to 4 fiscal modules. This beginning in 2019, we have delivered through INCRA almost 150,000 land titles, definitive land and provisional land titles in the Brazilian Amazon, allowing access by inhabitants of the region to productive policies from the Ministry of Agriculture. And at the same time, we have launched in May of this year the Analisa K, an electronic platform to accelerate the validation with more than 7 million public land registries, allowing viabilization of the program for the PRA, as well as the economic instruments called for in legislation, such as the quota for legal reserve, the CRA. We should also note the efforts of the Brazilian government, also through the National Council for the Legal Amazon, of fighting illegal deforestation and other environmental illegalities. The recent measures announced by President Bolsonaro have strengthened the agencies for enforcement who are already starting to provide positive results. Last week in Glasgow, at COP26, the government announced its adherence to the Declaration on Forests and Land Use and announced an ambitious commitment to eradicate illegal deforestation by 2028. Furthermore, it committed to expand planting of forests for various uses in 18 million hectares by 2028. Together, this process will allow us to stable land position in the region, open up a path for sustainable development in the Amazon. The second pillar of the policy of the Ministry of Agriculture for Sustainability is sustainable production. Here we have the highlights: the low-carbon agricultural plan, which achieved very significant results in the last decade, with initial pressure to disseminate sustainable productive practices such as direct planting and integrated systems for production. About 35 million hectares. The signals received by Embrapa from the Federal University of Goiás have noted that there's adherence by more than 52 million farmers have signed on with these agricultural plans. It's an area equivalent to 2 times the size of the United Kingdom. In practice, this is translated into economic gains for the producers, greater productivity, and reduction of pressure to incorporate new areas into productive activities. This so-called its effect has already led to production of more than 120 million hectares of native vegetation in Brazil. And sustainable production is also represents the main opportunities for investment and partnerships between Brazilian companies and European companies. We have invested in development of productive change associated to biodiversity in Amazon as a form bringing in farmers in the region to provide them with alternatives as opposed to predatory use of natural resources. Products like cacao, acai, and arapaima fish have major potential for development in the region that are strongly associated to sustainable development and inclusive development. Biofuels are a fundamental element of our commitments for climate action, also offer excellent perspectives for investment since their function they should be growing strongly in the next few years. In 2020, we launched a national program for bio inputs, and we are encouraging the greater use of renewable and biologically based inputs and to substitute chemical inputs. This process creates several opportunities for development of new businesses. Forest management is another important segment to catalyze investments and add value to biodiversity and the practices of sustainable management of forests and guaranteeing income for local communities and contributing to monitoring and conservation of the managed areas. The Brazilian Forest Service administers the public forest concessions that currently have about 1 million hectares, which may reach 4 million hectares in the next few years. The National Bank for Social Development has done important work in funding these models, guaranteeing the private sector will be able to invest responsibly, and with this we have expanded sustainable investments in the sector of forest concessions so that a fundamental alternative to ally preservation of our biodiversity to socio-economic development. And finally, in the sustainable production pillar, I mentioned also the green funding as an important vector for attracting investments. In this administration, we had several measures to expand private funding for funding agriculture and ranching in Brazil. We have the technological and banking package ready to receive investments in 2019. We signed a memorandum of understanding with Carapan's initiative, the main certifier of green titles and the certificates in the world, which included definition of global criteria for ranching and agriculture to prepare a plan for investments for sustainable agricultural and ranching in Brazil, and also aid to the central bank in developing a pilot program for green rural credit. In 2020, President Bolsonaro signed the agro law, which is the instruments such as CPR and land titles, making financial operations more simple, more transparent, and safer from the legal point of view. In March of this year was the adoption of the law of FIAGRO, an instrument that completes the credit market for agribusiness, universalizing access by investors to the sector and the access of farmers to financial markets. And more recently, and finally, we reached the green CPR, which will allow investments in environmental services by the rural producers. This will be another important way to monetize the efforts for environmental conservation carried out by our farmers and ranchers. The third pillar of the Ministry of Agriculture is productive inclusion of family agriculture. The inclusion of this agenda on the map, we then begin to give special attention to this contingent of Brazilian men and women who make up 7% of the rural properties in the country, 23% of the agricultural GDP, and occupy 67% of the labor employed in the countryside. The inclusion of these producers is essential to give them conditions to contribute to environmental preservation. Through the Secretary of Family Agriculture and Cooperativism, we implemented policies for support that seek to strengthen family agriculture in three main areas: access to rural credit, technical assistance and rural extension, and sales and cooperativism. We have the SAFA plan, where we put the harvest plan into family agriculture with lower interest rates and specifically lines for investments and rural housing. With this pillar, the focus for that investment is in dissemination of good productive practices and adding value and developing niche markets connected above all to socio-biodiversity. We instituted, in this case, PRONAP, destined specifically to promoting products of socio-biodiversity and the bioinputs, strengthening the links between family agriculture and sustainability, environmental sustainability. With all these efforts, it's very clear the potential for attracting investments provided by sustainable productive activities connected to agriculture and ranching in the legal Amazon throughout Brazil in a broader fashion. We have a solid and expanding market that will be going through major transformations in the next few years as we improve our productive chains and strengthen more and more the Brazilian contribution to mitigating impacts by climate change. We also have formation of strategic partners with the private sector in Europe that can concretely establish this potential and bring positive results for all of us, reinforcing the condition of Brazil as an agro-environmental power. The event today represents an important stage in this process. I wish all to have a productive debate and lots of good business, and thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. There's Christina.